Attention BetMGM customers. Have a friend who loves sports as much as you do? Here's a chance for you both to earn a $100 bonus when they sign up through BetMGM's Refer a Friend program. Just sign into your BetMGM account and click on the Refer a Friend program to send your friend a message, inviting them to register a new account in the same state you use BetMGM in. Once your friend signs up and makes a deposit, they'll receive a $100 bonus. And once your friend places a bet with their bonus and the wager is settled, you'll receive a $100 bonus as well. Share the excitement and get a $100 bonus every time you refer a friend to BetMGM. BetMGM.com for T's and C's. 21 plus to wager. Washington, D.C. only. All promotions are subject to qualification and eligibility requirements. Reward issued as non-withdrawable bonus. Bonus expires in 30 days. Please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Set summer in motion with the most adventurous Honda vehicles yet. Like the Passport and Pilot Trail Sport, and the Ridgeline, built for better off-road performance and engineered for more adventure. Summer's here. For a limited time, well-qualified buyers can get a 3.9% APR on a 2023 Honda Pilot, a 2.9% APR on a 2023 Passport, and a 0.9% APR on a 2023 Ridgeline.
Buy online, reserve from select dealers, or visit your local Honda dealer today.
See dealer for financing details.
You're listening to 100 Words or Less with Ray Harkins.
Hello, 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 you music hounds. I don't know why I have to say 3 hellos and I have to come up with a new intro. But you know what? I'm not going to, because this works for me and hopefully it works for you. You care about independent music. That's why you are here. Whether it's punk or hardcore, indie rock, metal, whatever it is, as long as it classifies itself underneath that DIY banner, which I love so much. And I know that's why you continue to come back week after week for these discussions. And I appreciate that. This is not lost on me, that you don't need to spend an hour out of your week with me and these people who I bring on the show. But yeah, it just, I don't know, man. I love seeing those numbers go up, and not from like a selfish or ego perspective. I just like to know that this show is resonating with people. So anyways, thank you. I have a great conversation this week with JT Woodruff from Hawthorne Heights. And I dive right into it with him in the conversation where I'm like, I never really liked Hawthorne Heights. Like, now, personally, in retrospect, I look at their musical output and I think what they do is really important and cool. Whereas, like, when they first came on the scene, it was like, yo, this band's, I don't know, pretty corny, pretty cheesy. I don't know about that. But, yeah, we have a great discussion about that. JT is very clear-eyed about his place, not only in the musical world, but what he's been able to do with his band, keep it like so DIY. And I have to give a beautiful, beautiful plug to the Is for Lovers Festival. So that is a festival that they started last year in 2022. They blew it out this year and are doing, I mean, they've done like, I don't know, about 10 or so dates. They actually have 2 or 3 more dates coming up. September 9th, they have it in Ohio at the Riverbend Music Center. They have it September 10th in Tennessee at the Caverns, which sounds absolutely incredible. And then they have the final one of this year, or I was about to say year long, but summer long run of festivals in Massachusetts at Mansfield, the Xfinity Center. So if you are in the area of those, you absolutely should check those out. I actually got to go to the California Is for Lovers date just this past weekend. It was very reminiscent of Warped Tour. And I know that's kind of like the vibe where people are trying to, you know, fill the space, whether it's like the Sad Summer Festival or obviously what this is going on. But it really did truly feel like that, because Hawthorne Heights curates the entire festival as far as like hand-picks bands, and usually it's bands that they love or have toured with or are friends with. It's a great vibe. I mean, got to see so many friends there, but it really did kind of remind me of the, I don't know, like the early 2000s of Warped Tour, where you felt like you ran into all of your friends at one space in some hot parking lot. in my case, it was a hot field in California, but it was great. I got to see, Touche Amore, Thrice, Further Seems Forever, Emery, just so many cool bands and cool friends. And Thursday, I can't forget Thursday. Holy moly. There's a lot of bands that played. But regardless, I love to have this discussion with JT, and I hope you enjoy it. So if you want to support the show, you can always email the show at 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. Love to hear feedback and questions, concerns, whatever it is that you want to toss my direction. I always appreciate that. You can also, for $0, absolutely free, you can leave a rating and review on the Apple Podcast page, or just leave a rating on the Spotify page where you listen to this podcast. I would appreciate it greatly. It helps out with the algorithm and discovery and all of those things that make marketing work appropriately. So let's dive into the discussion with JT right now. I will be completely transparent and honest with you, because we will be honest with each other. So I will call a spade when, you guys first obviously came on market, so to speak. I mean, I was working at an independent record store, and, you're like, Hawthorne Heights was inescapable at a certain point. And I was just like, yo, this band's corny as hell. Like, it's, and understandably so, like it was, you go through phases where it's just like, oh yeah, this, like, oh, I love Taking Back Sunday. And then, like, anything that comes after that, it's just like, oh, whatever, it's a ripoff of this thing. Anyways. But what I find interesting about, you guys, and frankly, other bands that, people either like myself or others have just like completely written off because they're like, it's not for me or whatever. But the fact that, you not only persist, but obviously persevere through all of the, ebbs and flows of our beautiful music scene. And, then people kind of retroactively be like, oh yeah, like, if a person put me on the spot right now, it'd be like, oh, do you like Hawthorne Heights? I'd be like, well, no, but dude, they're sick. Like, the perseverance. Sure. And so I'm sure some of that kind of gets reflected back on you in a way. And like, do you almost kind of wear it as a, not even a badge of honor, but just like, does that kind of register with you at all?
Oh yeah, definitely. 100%. And, I will be the first to say that I'm not entirely sure that we're not corny. First of all, anytime, you have an undying passion, undying love for a music scene that started so tiny and you never thought would go anywhere or do anything, like, you always wear your heart on your sleeve. And like, I guess it's just different than like, somebody like Mick Jagger that probably would give you an answer that's like, yeah, I'm a star. I knew I was a star. This was predestined. It was going to happen. I'm awesome. Nobody thought anything would go down. I always joke that like a year before our record went gold, I was working at a gas station. You know what I mean? Like, so like, we just wear all smiles because it's like, you just feel great being invited to the party. And sometimes like you get walled off from other people because you're like too enthusiastic about what you're doing. And like, people like to be like cold shoulder types. And I'm like, man, let's hang out and like, just relax and talk about music. And we don't have to put up any sort of front or anything, So maybe that can be considered corny to some. I fully agree. And I understand the sentiment.
Right.
I'm not mysterious is what I'm saying.
No, for sure. And I think that especially too, like with what you're talking about, just the control one has over their own art. Like clearly once it's out in the world, like, you have no control over it. Like people are going to do what they want with it and make up their own opinions about it. And, if they're just looking at a band through a very specific lens of like, oh yeah, that's that, Ohio's for Lovers band, like they're terrible or whatever. But then it's like, well, yeah, they've put out like 40 records after that. Like, oh, for real? Like, it's like, yeah, they're still around and they're still, not only drawing people, but like their art means something. And I think that really does put things in a different perspective, because you really haven't, from the musical side of things, like you've evolved and changed, but you're not unrecognizable,
Yeah. And that was kind of always our path. It was like, careers are going to go through peaks and valleys, and the music scene is going to go through trends and different just types of subject matter and stuff like that. We've always unashamedly been Hawthorne Heights. Like there was a big boom in like the neon color movement. We never went into that. There was a big boom in like sound design, and like theatrical metalcore took over the scene and stuff like that. And that just wasn't our bag. So we just continued to do what we do, which is basically we're a band of people who like, pop punk, traditional hardcore, emo, screamo, anything melodic. And, that's just kind of our thing. I think that it's like this big melting pot that sometimes comes off semi pop punk, and sometimes it comes off, emo, screamo, or whatever. But it's really just a blend of everything that the bands that we love. And we've never been afraid to say, you know what, Taking Back Sunday's sick, Thursday's incredible, The Used are kings, you know what I mean? Like Jimmy World is untouchable. Like we're not afraid to say that. A lot of people, like you have that facade put up and said that's like, oh, like the Smiths, the Cure, that's about all we listen to. Like that's not the world. Like, yes, we love everything, but when we were growing up doing rental hall shows and stuff, playing with Coheed and Cambria was incredible for us. Playing with Newfound Glory, you know what I mean? Like all these bands, like they're still sick. They're still putting out incredible music. And as much as some of them are our friends now, they're still legends in our eyes. So like, we're not afraid to just be who we are. And that's to be excited to be invited to the party,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And we'll reflect more on that in a little bit, but I know I'm not going to go too into your sort of biographical nature, so to speak, because you've clearly, strewn that about the internet. But like, were you actually, I was trying to decipher, were you born and raised in Dayton, or did you come up in like the surrounding suburbs?
Neither, actually. I have kind of a weird, I have a weird background, man. I grew up in a tiny town in West Virginia called St. Mary's. Population of about 1,000, nestled in the hills. And I first saw a punk band called Green Day in 1994, and I never stopped. You know what I mean? Like I played football, I ran track, I was good at sports. There was nobody in my town that played guitar or anything like that. So I just wasn't exposed to any of that stuff. But the second that I first saw Green Day, when that album first blew up, that was my first introduction to what California looked like and what punk rock looked like and everything like that. So like, you flash forward a few years and, I go to college, I drop out, decide I want to do music full time. And I moved to the one place that I thought that could happen, which was Dayton, Ohio.
Right. Of course. We're all
naturally
where dreams are made, obviously. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And what's really funny about that is one of my friends that was in my band back in West Virginia, he had just graduated college and he moved to his first job out of college was in a tiny town called Troy, Ohio, working for the Troy Daily News newspaper. And I was like, I'm not doing anything. Let's keep the band together. I'll move up there, because I was the lead singer in the band and he was the guitar player, and we wrote well together. And it was like, all right, I'll just follow you up there, because obviously nothing's happening here. And I'd only heard of Dayton, Ohio because of Guided by Voices. But I was excited to go, and it was a new adventure. And, West Virginia is a beautiful place, and my family still lives there, and I love to go back and visit, but it's not necessarily an entertainment mecca in the land of opportunity. So I was just happy to be doing something new. And, I meet a whole new group of friends, start a new band, and, the rest is kind of history. But yeah, I really don't have any connection to Dayton, Ohio. I'm a transplant here. I moved here just like I was transferred here for some other sort of job. You know what I mean? I got a job working at a gas station because I could walk there, and then just kind of hustled music until we got signed.
Right. Yeah. West Virginia, that's a wild. I personally I mean, I know you have obviously played many places around the country, but I think I've only played one show in West Virginia, and it was like some pizza parlor or whatever. But I mean, talk about a state that is shrouded in mystery for most people, and you probably have like an entirely different experience than what most people think West Virginia to be.
Yeah, I would definitely say that. I mean, I would say that, like, where I grew up was like a tiny town nestled on the Ohio River. When you go back to it, it seems entirely beautiful. But when you were there, it just seemed so small and closed in that, like, you couldn't imagine wanting to stay there. But, that's where I first heard hardcore. A band called Zayo was from 15 miles up the road from me in a town called Parkersburg, West Virginia, another unlikely candidate for success. But, we would go to their shows back in the day, and I had no idea what they were doing. They were just screaming, you know what I mean? And like, they would kind of turn us on to music and stuff. And you find out about, a band like Shelter, who had spent 2 years of their life living up the road in West Virginia at a Hare Krishna compound. And like, so there you go up and down the Ohio River of West Virginia, and there is a lot of DIY independent punk rock and stuff there. You just had to really search to find it out.
Right. Yeah. No, that's, I love the, just that idea. It's like, as your world expands, and once you start to get those little tidbits of information, like what you're talking about, how you can drop those anecdotes and really kind of rephrase, where it's like, oh yeah, like that's weird. I didn't think about that band from being from there, or like that band having that experience there. It's really cool to, add that to your just random talking points and facts.
Yeah. I mean, it's entirely odd. You would think that, like, I would have never heard of any of these bands from where I'm from, because the internet wasn't really that prevalent back then. We're talking late 90s here. And, you couldn't just click a button and figure out every band in the world. So you really had to kind of dig deep. And, Pittsburgh was 3.5 hours down the road, as was Cleveland and Cincinnati. So like, once I hit that phase in my life where all I wanted to do was see punk rock bands and hardcore bands, like, I wasn't across the universe or anything, but I did have to earn it, which, back then, that's probably why we're all still here today, because you had to earn it. You had to want to drive 3.5 hours to watch the Suicide Machines. You know what I mean? Like, that's how it is. And like, I don't know. Maybe that's why our generation is like kind of that last death rattle of like really, truly caring about something, because you just had to earn it, whether it's mowing a couple lawns so you can buy that CD just to find out that maybe it sucks. And then you listen to it 10 more times because you've invested in it. And then you're like, wait, actually, this is their best album. This is sick. I just needed to give it a chance. Yeah. So it's weird. Like, I wouldn't change anything. I think it's super cool. And, every once in a while I'll kind of slide into I'm talking to my family's slow accent, and I'll catch myself doing it. I'm like, wait, I'm not that person anymore.
Right. Well, and I think to your point of the generational aspect, it's like we're the first, people, whatever, from 35 to, 45, we'll call it, that have experienced both pre-internet and the infancy of it, and then, being digitally comfortable. Whereas like our parents obviously weren't. And then, the generations that came after us, they know nothing but the internet. And so it's very interesting to see how that we are at that juncture of like the last generation to feel both of those things.
Yeah, it kind of feels weird, doesn't it? It kind of feels like when you talk to your parents about, what their generation was doing, and like, we are now a different generation of people, and we're like, yeah, we can satisfy ourselves and like placate our own boredom because we had to when we were younger. We didn't have instantaneous entertainment. So if you wanted to hang out with your friend or skateboard or something like that, you literally had to go to their house, see if they were there, and then hang out. Like, it's the most analog thing in the world. It's ridiculous to think about doing that right now. Sight unseen, no communication. hey, I'm going to go over to Ray's house and see if he's in the basement, like jamming or something.
Totally. Maybe I can run into him at the mall or whatever. It's like, yeah, it's pure happenstance that any of us not only found each other, but that actually were able to create relationships because it was all just, stabbing in the dark.
Yeah, exactly. But it made you present. And like,
Yes.
I know it seems kind of corny and cheesy, but like you had to be in the moment because that moment was the only thing that existed.
Yep.
Everything else was in books. Like now if I wanted to see what Dubai looked like or Fiji, I could just Google coffee shop in Fiji and I would basically be there. You know what I mean? Like before it was all in your head or in a book. So you had to be in that moment, which was, probably why we all have such an appreciation for still being able to be in this band and to still be able to write songs and for have anybody to care about it whatsoever. Nothing's temporary,
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I think realistically that is what is, endearing about, bands that are able to, not only exist, but persist and release music. Like it does make people understand their not only legitimacy in the space, but know the fact that it's like, oh yeah, like that's cool. They're doing their thing. Not because I know it's like the idea of like, oh, you guys are still doing your thing, where it's just like, it sounds so dismissive, but
cute.
It's like,
oh, cute. Yeah. You're still in that band. Nice.
Totally. It's like, oh, JT, what are you gonna like, grow up or whatever? It's like, well, I did, but I just happen to still be playing in, this dumb band or whatever. It's fine, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh, bummer, career musician, drag. You know what I mean? It's like,
totally.
This is the stuff that dreams are made of, and people are like, they can be dismissive about it or make it seem ordinary. And you're like, this is like literally a 1 in a 5 billion chance that somebody
right.
could be living in West Virginia, figure out how to play guitar at 19, right-handed when they're left-handed, and then 4 years later they're like a career musician. Like I think that's where the majesty is, and that's where the magic is, that like you can't pry it from our hands, because we do realize how like special and fun it is. And it's a grind, obviously, but it's great.
Yeah, for sure. I know your family life was, chaotic in regards to, like, you've spoken, at length in regards to, the alcohol abuse in your family, which is what drove you to be straight edge. Even though you weren't necessarily aware that was like the label when you applied it to yourself and your practices. Your experience, and do you have siblings as well? I missed that part of your bio, as it were.
Yeah. I have one older sister. So like growing up I wouldn't even say it was like an aggressive alcohol situation. It was more like a really passive one, which is just lack of joy. You know what I mean? Like no camaraderie or anything like that from your parents, because you don't really understand what they're going through when one of them's an alcoholic, but you don't see it because it's not like violent, and like it's more like apathetic. You know what I mean? So like as a kid, you don't really see that. But my sister being 5 years older than me, I was in 6th grade when my parents split, and we left for West Virginia. So my sister would have been in 11th grade. You really have a deeper understanding of what's happening around you at that point in your life. Me, I was just a kid and, getting ready to leave middle school. So like, I didn't really know much, but yeah. So, but we have a great relationship because of that, because, like I'll ask her questions about how her life was growing up compared to how mine was, because my memory is a little bit more foggy, where hers is a little bit more razor focused, because she would notice the signs and notice when everything was falling apart. And to me, like, we just woke up one day and we're leaving my father behind. You know what I mean? So it's like interesting to have that sort of relationship and conversation with her.
Yeah, absolutely. To have, because I mean, it is even though people can grow up in this same exact, household and, maybe even be closer in age than what you and your sister are, you can have so vastly different experiences. And then both of you connecting on that same experience, you could be, describing it so differently. And it's those nuances that you absorb from one another that you're able to actually like put it in more clear focus.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, it wasn't an abusive thing. So like abuse is like in your face, you know what I mean? It's like you notice it and it sticks with you forever. This was, I would consider it not even lack of love, just nothing, just non-existent. You know what I mean? Like I had no relationship with my father whatsoever because he was an alcoholic through my entire childhood. So like very disconnected is what I would say. So I was fortunate that there was no like physical or mental abuse or anything like that. It was basically being around somebody who isn't there.
Yo, as always, this show is brought to you by rockabilia.com, and they have an amazing promo code for you to dive into. 100 words or less that gets you 10% off your entire order. They are a absolute warehouse / repository / Costco-like environment for you to buy band merch. I don't care if it's t-shirts, hoodies, like, we're going into the fall season, maybe start to think about long sleeves, how they can incorporate in your life, some hoodies, all that sort of stuff. They have so many cool things that I urge you to go to their website and just poke around, have fun. You'll be able to find things as eclectic as like, oh, cool. Like obviously there's some Metallica, some, Queen, but then you can also dive into like, Aerosmith, Bad Company, Bring Me the Horizon. It's all across the board, but that's what makes Rockabilia cool because you can get something for yourself and get something for a friend. They ship from the Midwest, gets to you lickety split, amazing customer service. Punk and hardcore kids work there. It ticks a lot of the boxes for things that I personally like to support. And rockabilia.com is something I wholeheartedly support. So again, promo code is 100 words or less, 10% off your entire order. You cannot lose by using that promo code. And it just makes you look, cool because you're saving money. And then obviously the company knows that this podcast sent you. So please use that and benefit greatly across the board. So rockabilia.com, 100 words or less is the promo code. Enjoy shopping.
Attention BetMGM customers. Have a friend who loves sports as much as you do? Here's a chance for you both to earn a $100 bonus when they sign up through BetMGM's Refer a Friend program. Just sign into your BetMGM account and click on the Refer a Friend program to send your friend a message, inviting them to register a new account in the same state you use BetMGM in. Once your friend signs up and makes a deposit, they'll receive a $100 bonus. And once your friend places a bet with their bonus and the wager is settled, you'll receive a $100 bonus as well. Share the excitement and get a $100 bonus every time you refer a friend to BetMGM. BetMGM.com for T's and C's. 21 plus to wager. Washington, D.C. only. All promotions are subject to qualification and eligibility requirements. Reward issued as non-withdrawable bonus. Bonus expires in 30 days. Please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
When you were, going through school and doing all that, like, did you care about it? Did you, like you said, you played track and football and stuff like that. Were you, I guess, participatory, or were you really kind of on the outside once music really started to take a grasp of you?
No, I'm kind of like all into what I'm doing, and I still really like the things that I grew up doing. Like I still watch football every single Saturday and Sunday during the season. I still love that. I still, love to play basketball, everything like that. So I never even started considering being in a band till I was out of high school. So being from a small town, like you either had sports or art, that was basically it. And I hadn't even discovered that I wanted to do anything musical whatsoever because it didn't even seem like an option. People on like, when I saw Green Day on the TV, I wasn't like, I could do that. Look at that guy.
Right.
It was like, that's a unicorn. I don't even know if that guy really exists, but because they're not around here, people like that don't look like that, And when I first started meeting, like I would say punks, like at college, that's when I first heard Minor Threat because, like people are asking you if, you want to drink, you want to go to this party. I'm like, actually, I don't drink. You want to smoke? No, I actually don't do anything. And they're like, you're straight edge? And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I
I
have
love
no idea what that means. So like, finding out that I'm straight edge at 19 years old, and then being able to check back on an iconic band from the 80s is hilarious if you think about it. You know what I mean? But then you go all in because your brain is able to take it in.
Yeah.
You're like a full-fledged adult. So you're like, oh my God. That was one of the first times in my life that I realized that there were people like me. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like that just didn't drink or didn't party because, in small towns, that's like pretty
All you
prevalent.
do. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
nothing to do. You can't break out of it. And yeah, so it was like, oh, okay, I'm not just punk. I'm also straight edge.
Right.
Weird.
There's a label. Right. There's a label for me because like it's really, you do feel that sense of authorship when you can apply a label to yourself, realistically at any age. Like, I mean, obviously there's less of a need to do it when you're an adult, like, saying you're straight edge at 42 is like, most people are just like, the hell are you talking about? But when you do have that idea that's like, oh, there's something that I'm already passionate about, and then on top of it, there's a label for it and there's a community for it. Like, wow, I can just buy in. This is great.
Yeah, I mean, that really was the first time in my life that I started to like feel like I belonged
Right.
in that punk community, in that like that DIY community, in the straight edge community, and hardcore, everything like that. Like the best thing is like reading the liner notes back then. Like you were able to do everything in reverse, but you had like, it was like a buffet was opened. You know what I mean? Like, oh, no effects. Or you go Green Day, no effects, straight into like, somehow down the road, you fall into Earth Crisis, and then you get Snapcase, and then, like all this stuff happens. And then, you dig even deeper, and then you hear a band like I Hate Myself, and you're like, whoa, that dude is
Right.
singing about heartbreak. So we're no longer, militant or anything. We're talking about stuff that is happening in our own personal lives. And, this gives you an outlet to do it. So that's kind of really what kind of led me in, is hearing bands that were more autobiographical, and times that you could hear somebody singing and feeling like you knew that person. Yeah, but like just hearing those bands for the first time, it was like, wow, there's like, you thought that you were like a rare bird and that you didn't fit in anywhere, and now you're like, I don't know that I'm necessarily ordinary, but I'm ordinary to them, and that's sick.
Right. Yeah. It's like there are friends. Like there's friends that people understand shorthand what I am talking about. And it's sort of the influence that we could potentially have on one another. It's like, yeah, like you said, the world opens up where there's so many possibilities.
Yeah, definitely. And like then you dig into the subsects of everything, and it's even more fun. Like instead of joining a frat, I figured out I was straight edge, and then maybe a year later I figured out how to play guitar and joined a band, and like never looked back, because now you like see somebody and they're like, yeah, I started playing guitar at 12 years old. And then I stopped when I was 15 because it was boring. And then you know what I mean? Like you start so early that like you can totally get out of your musical phase before you even fell in love with it. It's just a little thing that you go through. But back then, like nobody was doing that. Like you didn't see anybody and my first concert was Boys to Men and TLC. So I wasn't even going to like punk shows until I was like 19 or 20 or something like that. And a lot of that probably has to do with how the scene just like massively exploded, and like, punk, ska, all that stuff, and anything adjacent to it. It's hilarious to say, yeah, I heard Descendants in 1996 when Everything Sucks came out. And like
Right.
that was, or Bad Religion, literally on Stranger Than Fiction. You know what I mean? Like anybody that was from any other area already knew about this stuff years ago.
Sure.
So it was kind of liberating in a way, because you have so much to dive into and you're not
Right.
waiting for new bands to come out. You're like, holy hell, I haven't even made it through Bad Religion yet. I can't get to, Lifetime. We're
Right.
20 years from that. I gotta keep going,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's so much to unpeel and unfurl. What were you studying in college?
I was studying nuclear medicine technology, which is basically chemotherapy and cancer treatment and stuff like that. And the reason I was going to that is because I've typically been very good at science and biology and things like that, and I just had a general want to help.
Okay.
And I don't know, probably because I come from a fractured home, and it just felt like my way of, I don't know, finding a way to not make somebody ever feel like I ever felt. Or it was just like, I don't know, maybe I could get a good job if it was in the medical field. I
Sure.
was only in college for a year and a half, so like I would have been happy doing anything. But that was the line of thinking. The line of thinking was, I always did really well in school, and it sounded cool to me.
Yeah. The idea of, I mean, because especially too, what you're talking about, where you started to, once music articulated itself to you of, emotion and being able to express yourself. And like, you just really, you kind of get into that idea of, service, whatever that may mean, whether it's, in service of, a nonprofit, in service of the, taking care of people. Like, you just start to be more, sensitive and empathetic to that idea. And so I could totally understand where you're like, oh yeah, like I want to help in some way. And like, maybe this is a way that I can maybe focus my energy.
Yeah. I think that you're dead on. I think that's exactly where that stems from.
Kind of fast forwarding to the idea, like I know you have been, sort of self-deprecating and made jokes about obviously having like no idea to operate at the levels that you guys were, thrust into once, you became a band that was like, oh my God, we're selling a lot of records. And like, we didn't even know what that meant, 3 months ago. And like given like high profile things like playing late night shows and all these things that, still are like, it was funny watching some of those videos, yesterday. I was just like, this is so funny because like you guys for sure were like trying to make an impression, but at the same time, we're also just like totally average, because you didn't want to like terrify the audience or whatever. but it's so it's like, I could see all this like push pull stuff that's happening probably in your guys' heads, whether you had a recognition of it or not. Given the perspective that you have now, I'm sure that there was stuff that you would, not go back and change per se, because obviously all roads lead to where you're at right now, which is obviously the pinnacle of your existence on this podcast. But the idea that you could probably be like, oh yeah, like given what I know now, how would I approach this particular instance or the way that, we presented ourselves here? Or is it true that you would just be like, no, I'm glad we, did these things and maybe look like idiots or whatever?
Yeah. I mean, I think that you're kind of dead on. Like everything happens so fast that like, you're really at that point, just trying to keep up. And like, you don't have time to be excited about anything because the job needs to be done. So like when you get something like, oh, Conan O'Brien, you're like, oh, that's sick. Oh, wait, it's right in the middle of the tour. So we got to do 17 tour dates. We have 1 day off. And then we got another 34 tour dates. It was never like, like when you watch now, when I look back at it, and I watch these same videos that you're talking about every couple of years. And I'm like, wow, we actually sound pretty okay for really not having it together. So like we had no sound guy, no monitor guy. We just strolled in and like whoever their tech people are the people that are working for us that day. And, they might have had Paul McCartney the night before, you know what I mean? And we're like this band that is strolling in just with like regular stuff on. And the thing that I look back on it most is, I'll notice immediately now how somebody is like dressing the set to like look really impressive or fancy, and like to maybe theme like the album and stuff like that. Like all these like massive major label artists like have this budget to like make it look like beautiful and this wonderful world that they're porting the television into. And we're like just these 5 guys wearing what we would wear on stage that night, you know, playing at Starland Ballroom in Jersey or something like that. And like, you know, maybe one of us is wearing like an Anne Boleyn shirt or some or a Bayside shirt. One of our friends, like, we did not even consider wardrobe for the biggest look that we would ever have. You know what I mean? Like, and nobody sat us down and told us that. So like, it's not like Victory Records was like, hey guys, you're going to be on national TV tomorrow. We've got some outfits picked out for you, or we brought in a stylist, and you can pick out whatever you want because it's an important moment for you guys. It was like, nah, they booked us at a hostel on the like worst part of New York City, and we had to like somehow get down there. You know what I mean? Like it was so much.
It was survival. That's like all it was.
Yes, it totally was. And the fact that like we got through it without having, like, you didn't even know what like a panic attack or an anxiety attack was back then. But the fact that we could get through that and sound pretty good without any, like, we weren't using in-ear monitors. There was no such thing as like live auto-tune, or definitely not for a band like us. You know what I mean? So like what you see and what you hear is really just the house mixing person. And like what you see is literally what we strolled out of the hostel in and what we were wearing. And, you know, like that was normal to us. And I think that, like, you know, when you look at some of the other bands that did it, like, you know, Census Fail or Thursday or somebody like that, they all kind of look like us too. And maybe that was the appeal, you know, because if you think about when we were all kids, like the first time that you saw somebody like Nirvana or even Green Day or something, they were kind of strolling out the same way, and they were like trying to remain punk and grunge and everything like that. So like, I think that's probably why we didn't even think about it. We didn't even consider like you need to get like dolled up for the prom or whatever. We were just like, oh, hey man, are you going to wear that Silverstein shirt, or are you wearing the used shirt, or like what are you wearing? I just want to make sure that we're not wearing the same band shirt. It wasn't
we can't double up, right?
Yeah, totally. It wasn't like, hey dudes, we're all wearing purple in this one, and it's going to match the backdrop. You know, like it was just, it was really chill. And, you know, maybe that's why we never really thought about it. You know, like you're obviously when Jay Leno's sparkly blue eyes are staring a hole in you, or Max Weinberg is literally watching you in probably what you think is disgust.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because it's like, we're not on a click. We're not on anything. We are hanging on for dear life.
Right. Look at these idiots. What are these children here for? Right.
Yeah. Who booked this band? You know what I mean? Like,
how did they sneak in here? This seems weird. Yeah. I totally get that.
Yeah. But so like, you don't really have time to like, stop and smell the roses. You are like, hey man, we survived that. That's sick. Like we lived to tale, and tomorrow we're playing a sold out show at, you know, Irving Plaza or whatever. And it's like, wow, you know, it was never like, hey guys, you aren't on tour in this little time. How about we fly you out to LA and you rehearse and then you go play Jay Leno? It was like, nah, can we should we cancel a show? Or should we try to fit that in? You know what I mean? It was all like,
let's just stack all these opportunities. Yeah, no, I mean, because that's very symptomatic of that era, because I do think, to your point, it felt like, I mean, everybody was recognizing, like when I say everybody in independent music world recognized the trend that was happening and the scene that was being built around it. And it totally felt like the collective scene had wedged their foot in the door to this weird mainstream attention. And it's like, let's shove it in as quickly as possible, because we know this door is going to close. We don't know exactly when, but it's going to close.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, you're just running as fast as you can. and hoping
Right.
that your lungs and your heart can keep up with you.
Right.
Because like none of us ever thought this was even close to a possibility, because all of our favorite bands were basically small bands. You know what I mean? Like it's like the top of the world. Who would the top of the world be? Somebody like Sunny Day Real Estate or something like that. You know, they're not playing like Madison Square Garden or something like that. You know what I
No.
mean? So
Yeah.
like, yeah, so you definitely knew, when are they going to make us fumble this and they're going to run the ball back the other way and we're never going to see it again. You know what I mean? Like you just
sure.
knew that was going to happen. So like anytime we got any of that like real deal mega look stuff, like being on the radio, and I don't mean like specialty programming, I mean the actual radio, they had to start playing us because they felt foolish not to. They're like, this band is on the charts and they are like, you know, they have a record coming out that is going to chart top 5 and we are not playing their songs. Are we stupid? Like, what's happening here? Why are we not playing this rock band songs? So like, you kind of get a foot in the door sometimes because people don't want to look foolish that they missed out on the opportunity of catching somebody and being a part of that story. So like, yeah, you just see like, everybody's got to kind of look at the trends and everything and see how it stacks up. And like, yeah, there was a time where every programmer was like, okay, who's the next big screamo band or emo band or whatever this genre is called? Who is popping right now? And that was the hippest person in the world. You know what I mean? Like finding these bands that were selling, 2,000 tickets in each market with no support whatsoever. Like no radio, no video, no MTV, nothing. They're just, it's a groundswell. So they needed to also feel like they kind of got it too. So yeah, it was happy to like slide through the crack for a little bit and be a hologram into the world of mass market media.
Our friends at evilgreed.net love to support this show, and I love them for it. Even before I was aware of what they did, which is basically offering web store solutions for bands and record labels to sell their stuff. They're based in Berlin, Germany. But you, the consumer, you can go to their website, evilgreed.net, and shop to your heart's content. And I know, you heard me say that they're from Berlin, Germany, and you're like, I'm a little scared to order from Europe. I'm based in the United States. Trust me, the shipping rates are advantageous for us, and you can use this promo code. Most important thing, 100 words, that gets you 10% off of your entire order and some of the most recent items that they've put up. This just gives you a sense of the type of artists and bands and record labels they're working with. They just recently launched a, end pre-order. Or how about Magnitude? How about Gouge Away? How about Tsunami? Like, you get it. Basically, as long as it is heavy and / artistic, they got something going on with there. And then plus, like Linguada, or I'm totally butchering her name right now. But anyways, she launched a new project, the vocalist of that, and stuff's on pre-order there. So it's spectacular. Just go to evilgreed.net, use the promo code 100 words. It gets you 10% off your order. And you can get like vinyl, t-shirts. I don't care what it is. They got it. And they have a very specific point of view, which makes it even cooler because you know that you can buy stuff almost like, sight unseen. Like, I'll bet you if you just bought like a grab bag from them, you would get, like out of the 5 shirts you would get, like you would love 4.5 of them. I'm just saying half because you can't like all 5. But anyways, nonetheless, evilgreed.net, 100 words is the promo code. Go enjoy shopping.
Attention BetMGM customers. Have a friend who loves sports as much as you do? Here's a chance for you both to earn a $100 bonus when they sign up through BetMGM's Refer a Friend program. Just sign into your BetMGM account and click on the Refer a Friend program to send your friend a message, inviting them to register a new account in the same state you use BetMGM in. Once your friend signs up and makes a deposit, they'll receive a $100 bonus. And once your friend places a bet with their bonus and the wager is settled, you'll receive a $100 bonus as well. Share the excitement and get a $100 bonus every time you refer a friend to BetMGM. BetMGM.com for T's and C's. 21 plus to wager. Washington, D.C. only. All promotions are subject to qualification and eligibility requirements. Reward issued as non-withdrawable bonus. Bonus expires in 30 days. Please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Something that also intrigues me about, when you guys get to those, levels and you're, like you said, kind of existing in this world that, not only could you never imagine, but, don't feel like you're actually living it yourself. I'm sure that, once people started to put the pressure on, whether it was obviously Tony being like, we need a record immediately, or whether it was obviously management you were working with, like, did you feel pressure as things started to mount, or did you do pretty good to sort of insulate yourself from that pressure?
I mean, absolutely. You feel pressure going because, when we made our first record, The Silence in Black and White, there was zero pressure at all because nobody had ever heard of us. You didn't even really have a handle on who you were, let alone like anybody had any expectations for you. But then the roller coaster just kept climbing. So like you were waiting for a breath of fresh air at one point, and you never got it because it just kept growing and growing and growing. So now it's like we never got to reach the pinnacle of what The Silence in Black and White could be because our label wanted us to make another record really quickly to try and maintain that momentum. So when you try to maintain momentum, you have to stop something else that was happening. And to get into the studio. But, we were always a band since we were always under pressure anyway, that like we needed that pressure on ourselves to enforce the deadline to be like, all right, this is the day that our album has to come out. These are the studio dates. It doesn't matter if we have good enough songs, we have to.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and that kind of drove you. So like we never got that like really sick, cushy major label contract where they're like, hey dudes, if you guys want to go write a record in Big Sur for the next 3 years, as long as you come out with 12 undeniable golden hits, we'll fund it. It was more like, no, you need to get into the studio immediately to try and capitalize on this before it dies off, and we need more songs to promote. So it was more like that. And that's kind of how like a lot of indie labels were, because like you just had no scope, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like you had no concept of like, is this going to die? Is it going to go on forever? Is it, can we sell 5 million records instead of 1 million records? Like you have no idea. And for us, we're like, oh, sick. We get to record more songs.
You're like, I can't believe we're here. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I can't believe we get a decent budget to like, record with somebody that we've heard of. Awesome. Yep. This is going to be fun.
Totally. When you started to, I guess, ramp down the hamster wheel of touring that you guys were on, obviously for many, many years, like clearly you still kept creating and obviously, releasing music here and there. But, it got to a point where you obviously had to exist more in quote unquote real life and, be present more at home than you were away. Was that a difficult transition for you, or was that something you were, excited to be present more at home?
I mean, man, it's tough because really the only time that we've like, let's say, grinded to a halt was with the death of our guitar player, Casey, because obviously that's a monumental event that you don't take lightly, and you're not like, all right, who's playing guitar for us? Yep. That's not the situation. It's like, we don't know if we're going to be in a band anymore. We're just trying to figure out and navigate losing our best friend that we're never going to see again. So that was a monumental time frame for us where we had to mentally stop.
Right.
So basically just that. And then COVID. Like we have been ramped, firing on all cylinders every day other than those two major life events. So, like when we got married, we basically all got married right around the same time because we all had to take that time off directly after Warped Tour 2005 and directly before making our record, If Only You Were Lonely. So we're like, okay, well, I'm going to get married on this day. When are you getting married? You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to do it, you got to do it right now. Otherwise, you're going to wait 3 years. So whoever wants to get married, let's get married then. It's kind of like that. And then, like, I'm getting ready to have our kid, and like we're on Warped Tour 2007, and like my daughter's supposed to be born with a week left for the tour. So like I have 2 cell phones on me. I have my tour manager looking at the phones, not watching us play, not doing anything like that, just looking to see if my wife goes into labor.
Right.
And like literally like the last 2 weeks of Warped Tour, like it was really starting to like affect me. And like, the funny thing is the Dexter from The Offspring was on that tour, and he was like, "Hey, I heard your wife's going to have a kid. Don't worry, man. I fly myself in and out of every show. I'll fly you to Cincinnati if I have to."
Whoa.
That's like one of those moments that just kind of seemed ordinary. But like you look back on it, it's like, man, a band that I love was going to fly me to witness the birth of my daughter. And he was happy to do it. It was like, that's when you're like, that's why we're always smiling. You just have so many moments that outweigh all the bad things that have happened. And like, you were a fan first, you know what I mean? So
yeah. No, that's really, well, and I guess just the idea that you have been able to over time find the balance between being on tour and, being home and present and what have you. Cause I mean, you've seen it a million times over where if bands don't have refill the tank of experiences of like what it's like to be an actual human as opposed to touring for 300 days out of the year, you just end up writing, some shades of similar subject matter that you had done in the past or what have you. And so that's where I was more curious about, like, how you're able to, I guess, have both of those experiences without losing the perspective of, who you are as a human.
Yeah, for sure. And, it is kind of like you can be living a double life and not realize it sometimes. Because of that, you have to compartmentalize all the bad things that happen while on tour, or all that boredom, especially if you don't if you don't use substances or anything, you know what I mean? Like I've been straight edge forever through all of this. I can't crack a couple beers to like melt away the sorrows after a hard night or whatever, you know what I mean? I just kind of got to sit there in my thoughts, and maybe that's helpful to me because I can kind of work it out. But yeah, I think one of the main reasons is that my wife and I have been together since 2001, and she is the Nikki FM from the song Nikki FM. She's the reason that There's an Ohio is for Lovers and all that stuff. And that's not lost on me at all. Anytime we're going through something or had been going through something, I find a way to work it in to what I'm doing to kind of write myself out of it, and to give me the perspective that I need to understand when this life can be too much for her. Because to me, it's all about the art of the grind. You know what I mean? It's like being a musician, being in the punk world or being in the DIY world and stuff like that. Like, it is sleepless nights and you are working nonstop, but I'm lucky to have a very supportive person in my life that understands when I'm losing it, that she's a stabilizer for me, and that going home is exactly what I need at that time, because we still enjoy each other, and that's kind of hard to say for somebody that's been a musician forever and been on the road as much as I've been home. And like, yeah, being able to have that balance and being able to be present when you're home and be able to like just do little things like, send texts at the appropriate time of when you're feeling something and stuff like that. Like that kind of comes with being an adult and truly caring for somebody.
Mhm.
And I think that it's kind of rooted in that small town wonder that I'm always like kind of wide eyed about everything. And also, like we're pretty rational to a fault. You know what I mean? We had one child on purpose because we knew that this life was going to be pretty wild. And we knew that like, if my career continued, there's no possible way that I could leave my wife home with one kid, let alone two kids, constantly while I'm gone. That's not fair to either of us because emotionally it just drains me that I can't be there. And for her, it's like, having to be on the spot at all times. And it's just, if you don't look at it like really level-headed and really rational, like it's really hard to get through. So I'm very fortunate that we can kind of always talk through everything and understand when the schedule gets a little bit wild. And it's great to have a friend that's your spouse that you can name a song after.
Yeah,
say it that way.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure this more so from the idea of kind of going back to the, just super weird random opportunities that had been, granted, like when obviously the band was at its like, weird peak that we were talking about, the, sync opportunities where it's like, oh, we're going to put Hawthorne Heights in this, whatever Subaru commercial and stuff like that. I'm sure there was those random things that you said yes to, and there was random things that you probably said no to because you're like, we can't be in a Dell computer commercial or whatever. Like, is there anything that strikes your memory when I bring something like that up?
Not really, because, we were on Victory Records. They called all the shots.
Sure,
you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, it's not like we were on the Elektra soundtrack. I don't know why.
Oh,
we were
yep.
on the Underworld Evolution soundtrack. I don't know why. And, like, I think it's a cool opportunity because having, grown up listening to soundtracks, I wouldn't really care about the movie at all. It just, if it had sick artists on it, that was awesome. So like being able to be on a soundtrack is like a little tiny benchmark. But yeah, we never really had any control over that. But I don't remember anything happening that was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe they're pitching our music like that. I guess one of those moments maybe is like Jersey Shore because it's like ultra cringe. But
Sure.
You know what I mean? But like, who cares?
Yeah, right. That's not going to be this, this scarlet letter. It's just like, I was playing in the background, Jersey Shore, no big deal. It's fine.
Yeah, we never really I was punk, but I wasn't that punk. I wasn't like, you know what I mean? Like, what am I going to do? Stand up to the label or something like that because they tried to put my song in Meet the Parents or something like that,
Right.
But
you can't throw your body in front of that one. Yeah.
Yeah, like the only opportunity that we got that was kind of a bummer, and I don't know that I've ever told this story, but we wrote this song before If Only You Were Lonely came out, and we worked on it with David Bendeth, and which is one of the reasons that we went to him for that record because we had a good time working on this song. And it was for the Bad News Bears remake.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So we wrote a song called Light Sleeper, and we just did not know what we were doing. We wrote a Hawthorne Heights song. You know what I mean? We just wrote a song that we would like and that our fans would like. And it's got screaming and it's like, has the little sunny day emo parts to it and it's intricate. And meanwhile, they're wanting like, I don't know, they're probably wanting like some sort of like 80s banger or something like that. And like, we're like, you asked us to write this song. And like,
Yeah.
I love the original Bad News Bears movie. So I'm just in heaven, but like, you didn't give us any parameters or anything. It's not like they were like, all right, this song needs to sound like a home run right after Billy Bob Thornton just yelled at whoever else is in the movie. You know what I mean? Like we were given nothing. It was just like, hey, this guy likes you. He wants you to write a song.
Yep.
So it didn't make it in the movie, but it was a good experience. And that's the one time that like we actually had control over it. It was like something that was like a cool opportunity for us, and we blew it. So
yeah. You understood the assignment, but the assignment was not clear to you. So that technically wasn't your fault per se. I wouldn't say you blew it, but yeah, you're just, you were, like you said, writing a Hawthorne Heights song, which obviously that's not what they were looking for. So why should they even ask you in the first place?
Yeah, it's kind of a bizarre thing. And it's not like they sat us down with like some songwriters and we're like, hey, we got these like A-list guys in here and they're going to help you craft the perfect, teen baseball comedy song. It was like, go ahead, write a Hawthorne Heights song. And it was like, all right, we did. Here you go.
Yep.
Like, so that's just like being painfully unaware of really what you're supposed to be doing. Like now, like I could approach it in a way that would be Hawthorne Heights, but would also be Bad News Bears. But back then it was like, nah, this is sick. We're in a studio right across from New York City and we're just writing a song for Billy Bob Thornton. This is great.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Right. You could, with maturity and perspective, you can view it through the lens, and you probably would have been able to crush it now in 2023, as opposed to, whatever in the 2000s, where you, like you said, you were just operating off of instinct.
Yep.
This is kind of, follow me along here. The idea of, people make fun of a band like the Chainsmokers, where it's just like, they're a massive band. No one has any idea what they look like. But it's one of those things where I've always been, admired you guys, where it's like, you are visible, like people know what you guys look like, but it's one of those things where you have never put yourselves so far out there to have that like level of recognition that is probably, prohibitive or crushing, to where it's just like, oh my gosh, like I can't even go to the grocery store or whatever. I presume that is like not only deliberate for yourself and like obviously giving the, those boundaries, or was that just something because you're like, oh, we're just normal looking dudes, so like no one even cares what we look like or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's probably, like I'm the lead singer, but I also wear glasses, which is, I wear a very specific type of Ray-Ban glasses. So it just it unintentionally looks like a trademark. So people kind of know what you look like. Do you know what I mean? Like it's unintentional, but I mean, I just wear a classic pair of branded glasses. But yeah, like in our hometown, like people definitely know who we are. And like, if we're at the grocery, we're definitely getting talked to. And, that's the beauty of staying in the town that you're from. It gets a little bit weird when I'll go to either the parent teacher conferences or like the orientation for the next year of my daughter's school. And then the teacher, if it's a young person, will be like, wait a minute, your last name's Woodruff. Wait, that's definitely who this is.
Right.
And then, like they'll start talking about it. And my daughter will be like, she's super proud of us and really starting to understand everything, because she like comes to the shows and like works with us and hangs out and everything. But like now she kind of understands the cultural impact from this region in 2004, and how all these people that are like teachers now, it was a part of their high school and their childhood and everything. And like, they're early on in like 8th grade, it was like embarrassing. It was like, oh my gosh, they know who you are. And I was like, that's actually a good thing. Like, you look like you have cool parents. They know a song about your mom and they know who your dad is. That's cool.
Right.
Not like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have
not cringeworthy. Right.
No, you don't have the dad that has like bad facial hair and is like, an accountant or, something like that. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but like, that's like a regular guy. You have a little bit more than that. And like, that should be fun. But it's, kids are kids, but,
yep.
But yeah, it's a blast. You know what I mean? Like, we still live here because, other than the weather, we do enjoy it, and like it's where we're from, and we consider it home and everything, and you know, like, but yeah, like I guess probably because our, like, you know, growing up in a tiny town, and also like listening to punk and stuff like that, like there wasn't really a uniform, and like we never really hit that, like, okay guys, we're a massive band now, we've sold, you know, a couple million records, we've been on Jay Leno, now we got to start looking like you too. We never really had that phase, you know what I mean? Like we didn't have, like, we didn't try, there's not one guy that's like, okay, well, you're like the colorful hair guy, so you're dyeing your hair green for the rest of our career. Or, yeah, we just never really had that. It was all pretty chill, pretty, you know, dark jeans, dark shirt, and, you know, Vans or something like that. So, like, you know,
you didn't need to, right? You didn't need to, you know, like you, you let the things around you change rather than changing yourselves as individuals to mold whatever. I mean, obviously you've done that musically, so it makes sense that you also stay consistent as human beings as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird having a level head, to be honest with you. It's like
it totally,
yeah, it can feel like, man, are we too like boring? Are we too average? Or is this like, are we endearing because we are very similar to the people who listen to us? You know what I mean? Like it can be taken in a lot of different ways, but like I think realistically we just are who we are. You know what I mean? And like if you need more than that, maybe we're not the band for you. Or if, you know, you like regular guys who are excited about playing their own songs and playing with bands that they love on a daily basis, then maybe we are the band for you, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. You're definitely touchable from that perspective. It's not this, you know, oh man, Hawthorne Heights, like larger than life. It's like, no, like, you know, we're idiots making stupid t-shirts standing in front of, you know, leafy walls. Like that's what we're going to be. Like that's what we're always doing.
As advertised, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
We're on brand, to maybe a fault sometimes, but like, you know, there doesn't need to be mystery surrounding any of this. You know, these are all basically 3 or 4 chord songs, inspired by everybody that we think are great bands.
Right. There's no artifice. Yes, that's for sure.
Yeah.
The last thing I wanted to hit on was the, obviously the, you know, Is for Lovers Festival, and the, you know, I think most people, like when you guys started, because correct me if I'm wrong, like 2022 is when you first did you did the festival, but then now, you know, you're obviously rolling it out across the country, right?
Yeah. So we did 3 of them in last year in 2022, Kansas, Colorado, and Ohio. And, you know, that's kind of like our, whatever, if you want to be on the Shark Tank, that's our proof of concept, to see that we could physically do it. If you build it, will they come? That sort of scenario. And like this year, after the success of last year, we got a lot more interest, and you know, we're hoping that we don't drop the ball, so to speak, and we're really just trying to like be careful stewards of a genre that we love and that we perform in. And we're just trying to grow it from there, and to keep it relevant, and to give people that are similar to us a place to play or a place to go to a show. So that, and you know, like we're trying to do it in wild locations that you never thought you would see emo go. And that's the most fun for us. You know, like we just did Lake Tahoe Is for Lovers a couple of weeks ago, and it's like, it took us 20 years to play Tahoe, let alone bring a festival there curated by us with some of our favorite bands of all time on it. So like, it's literally it's like dream fuel, you know. Before that we did Hawaii. Yep. Crazy. It's like wild times at the OK Corral, man.
No, totally. It definitely, and the question I was getting to in regards to this is the, you know, the event, like you said, proof of concept, like it works from an attendance perspective and a business perspective, where it's just like, you know, like, oh yeah, like we're not going to lose our shirts doing this thing. what I admire about it is the fact like it could come across as, like just nostalgia porn, like very cheesy, but somehow like in my mind, it doesn't, because it's that sort of celebratory nature that you're talking about. Like, oh, summer camp for us and all of our friends, but then also, inviting people to come out and watch us and stuff. I'm sure there was a lot of discussions with, you and the band and, your business partners to be like, how do we, do that without sort of proverbially jumping the shark or whatever? Or was that just like, kind of like how it accidentally happened?
Yeah, I mean, that is absolutely something that we consider. It's like we all have these conversations, and it's like we're doing a MySpace wall this year, and we're like, is that too on the nose or too cringy, or is it intentionally cringy, which makes it lovely? You know what I mean? It's like,
right.
Because like our whole idea about our festival is that we want to create a festival that is, the bands that every fan loves in locations that the bands love. So like we're trying to make the backstage experience as good as the front of stage experience, because from the band's point of view, some festivals can get really like clinical and really like, okay, well, you get this dressing room for 2 hours. Here's your meal ticket, play your show, and then leave. You know what I mean? Like it can come off really business-like and really transactional. And like what we're trying to do is create like outdoor cookout vibes, and like just have the bands be hanging out and like wanting to be there instead of just showing up for a payday or like trying to get out of there as soon as possible. And we think that if you do it that way, the fans will see how much fun the bands are having, and they'll remember those times. That's kind of our vibe. And really just to try to, like I said, be careful stewards of the genre, be respectful of the genre, and like invite all these bands that we also love and bands that we're friends with to just kind of share the day together in a fun location. Because I think that's what the fans do. The fans are going with friends. Sometimes they're meeting up with people they haven't seen in a long time. And, we try to kind of do what we all did back in the day at Warped Tour, except add the extravagances that you need when you're 30, like seats and air conditioning,
right? Like
legit bathrooms, and like fun themed drinks, and like iced coffee, like just stuff that like you're more into as an adult, but also the bands you listen to that make you feel young. So like, it's just a lot of fun, like choosing the bands, talking to them, and like, basically what we'll do is we'll write a little personalized letter to them and leave them in their dressing room and explain why we asked them, even if they're friends that we've known for 20 years. Like we will dig deep and explain why we want you there and why you matter to us. And, and that's one of those moments that's either delightfully cringy, or somebody appreciates, or somebody looks at and goes, I've had enough of these guys. Now they're trying to talk to me on a heartfelt level. You know what I mean?
I'm really envisioning that idea. Cause like, you're like, okay, the reason you are playing is because like you're of this time, and like, you did this and did that. And like, a person who hasn't like thought about their band from that perspective is just like, what the hell are you talking about, JT? Like, no, dude, I'm not interested. Like I totally get, I see exactly what you're talking. It's like, you're trying to, sell a, an experience, and people are, people just like, I just want to play a show. What the hell are you talking about? All this other stuff or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. We're trying to break down those walls of like doing this for 20 years. And like, it can feel ordinary and it can feel just like another show. I'm like, nah, man, you're invited to this. We're going to write you a personalized letter, and I'm going to at least try to make you remember how fun this is. Because sometimes it can be a grind, you know what I mean? I'm like, dude, there's Twinkies backstage. There's, act like this is the 90s and just like Home Alone this thing, man. Let's have fun.
Right.
But yeah, it's just kind of like that. Kind of like it's all fun for the fans and for the bands, and we're really looking forward to the entire summer.
Yeah, no, that's super awesome. Well, JT, I genuinely appreciate you coming on, and thank you for letting me ping pong around your brain for these responses. I appreciate you.
Yeah, of course, Ray. I like I said, I'm a big fan of the podcast. I love anybody who is willing to like get down and dirty when it comes to like music and the scene and hardcore and punk, and like really just try to capture some sort of snapshot of who any of us are as people and why we do it. So I appreciate it very much. Great conversation, and I can't wait to tell all my friends to listen to it.
So there you have it. That was JT. And if you're not familiar with Hawthorne Heights, check them out, because it even though it's not necessarily for me, it could be for you. And what they do is cool. And I enjoy it for what it is. And JT was just, I became fast friends with him after that, especially straight edge adults. We had to stick together in some capacity. So shout out to Monica, his publicist, for putting the idea on the radar, even though realistically I was like, oh yeah, I want JT on. And then, sometimes it's just these happenstance things where it's like, hey, you want to have this person? I'm like, yes, I've been meaning to reach out. Thank you very much. So next week we have a very, very informative and insightful discussion with one of my, to me, a newer band, but a band that's been kicking around in Australia for quite some time. I have Corny from the band Geld, or Geld, Geld. They just put out a record on Relapse, and honestly, I just fell in love with it. It has a amazing mixture of like D-beat, sort of like Celtic Frost mixed with just kind of raging hardcore. It's so good. And I got to have Corny on, and he is a very interesting person because he got raised in Ireland, has a lot of experience within the DIY scene there, traveled to Australia some 10 odd years ago, has been in this band, has been in a ton of bands. And frankly, he goes deep because I'm like asking him, kind of stupid questions about like, I don't know anything about the Irish punk scene, broadly speaking, it's like, yeah, the Pogues, but that's kind of it. So, he educates me and gave me a lot of things to learn. So that's what we got next week. Corny from Geld.
Before Sarah discovered ChumbaCasino.com, she enjoyed chamomile tea.
Come on, big jackpot.
And being in PJs by 6.
Let's go.
The new fun Sarah often thinks about the old boring Sarah.
Yes.
And wonders if that Sarah ever really existed.
Chumba Casino has over 100 casino-style games. So join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
This is Ice-T. Over the years, I've compiled thousands of inspiring and thought-provoking quotes, and now I'm passing that knowledge on to you in my new daily podcast, Ice-T's Daily Game. In less than 5 minutes, I'll break down why these words matter and reveal personal stories that show them in action in my life. Listen to Ice-T's Daily Game every weekday on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts and start your morning with me.
I'm Diosa.
And I'm Mala.
We are the creators and hosts of Locatora Radio, a radiophonic novela.
Which is just a fancy way of saying
a podcast. We're two LA locals turned full-time podcasters, and we talk about everything.
From sexual wellness to pop culture,
internet drama to politics,
and everything in between.
So if laughter and learning are something that you crave,
subscribe to Locatora Radio, your prima's favorite podcast.
Listen to Locatora Radio on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever